What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here, aka The Geek from DFS Army, and we are rapid reacting to NFL's round one of the draft for fantasy purposes. We went through round one. We had three quarterbacks go. We've got four wide receivers in a row, two running backs in round one. So I want to talk about fantasy implications for all these moves, and we're going to talk about dynasty rankings. Probably want to stick with dynasty rankings this time of year. So we'll talk about dynasty rankings, a little bit of redraft for some best ball stuff, and a reminder that my full blast SuperFlex dynasty rankings will be coming out within the week after the NFL draft. So very, very shortly if you're watching this draft week. But I want to talk about first round and a little rapid react to some of the plays that went off, some of the spots that some of these players went to who didn't get drafted, some shocks. So let's get right into it and talk about the three quarterbacks. And we're just going to talk about all three and some fantasy implications. Bryce Young goes to the Panthers. And for me, Bryce Young goes number one overall, draft capital, secure. The problem with Bryce Young, obviously being 5'10", is that he's really, really small. And what does that do? Bryce Young does not have a pedigree where he was a heavy runner. So honestly, my comparable at his size is probably Doug Flutie. There just isn't a ton of, I mean, Flutie was 5'9", so that's like the closest guy, similar speed, that had a career in the NFL that was pretty decent. So Doug Flutie had some good years, some good fantasy production, I'd say. And this is sort of the upside, I think, for Bryce Young. At me if you don't think so, but I do have some concerns about the height and just overall how that affects things. Now, that being said, the opportunity in Carolina is as good as it gets. You're probably locked into 2 to 3 years of getting a chance to become a good player. And in Dynasty, that's a lot, all you can ask for. Really, really safe play. So of the quarterback crew, I'm going to call him the safest of the group. CJ Stroud winds up in Texas. And again, great opportunity in Texas. Not a whole lot of wide receiver talent around him early on. As a matter of fact, there's no wide receiver talent there. So I don't know that CJ Stroud is looking good to me as a player fantasy asset in year one. One thing to note about CJ Stroud, he does have all of the sort of dimensions that you want in an NFL quarterback. 6'3", okay, good size. Speed 4.79. That's not bad for the size. That's very, very similar to Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes and those type of guys in terms of their speed. So he hasn't been a willing runner in college either. I always look at the rushing stats, and man, there wasn't a whole lot of it, especially in 2021, literally negative. So he didn't run at all. 2022, 108 rushing yards, not very good. One thing I would note, though, is look at the completion percentage, really, really solid. 72% in year one, 66.3% year two, and the touchdown to interception ratio is crazy, 41-6, 44-6. So I really like Stroud. I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback, and I think he's going to be a solid pick, but I don't really love his outlook in year one. The one thing that I guess Houston has going for it is they're probably not going to be in a lot of games, so they're probably going to be throwing a lot. So CJ Stroud, totally fine. And then, of course, you have the upside play, the dice roll guy. Anthony Richardson goes fourth overall to the Colts, and I guess we couldn't have asked for a better landing spot. Good professional coaching staff there. Now, this does harm. So we're rapid fantasy reactioning here. And the first thing that comes to mind, and actually I didn't mention it with Bryce Young, but, there are, not a whole lot of wide receiver options on the Panthers right now either. So that should be in. I think Terrace Marshall, really interesting. But for the Colts, Anthony Richardson immediately puts the stifle on Pittman, on the other guys, Paris Campbell. Was the other one, the rookie from last year? I can't remember his name. But this is not a good scene for the pass catching group for the Colts. Now, I actually don't want to react too harshly because I don't think Anthony Richardson's going to start day one. I actually think that Gardner Minshew will probably start early. If Richardson is starting, man, if you're drafting in Dynasty, SuperFlex, and your league, they're doing a disservice. If they want to draft right after the NFL draft, like, we got to get the rookies, it's going to be tough because Anthony Richardson's the type of player like where I like to hear training camp reports. I want to hear what the coaching staff is saying because the passing, the arm did not look good at all in college. As a matter of fact, like the numbers, the lack of experience. This has all the makings of Trey Lance. The lack of experience. Only one full season. In that season, a 53% completion percentage. Not good. 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. That's not good. 654 rushing yards. Okay, that's great. But honestly, that's a little disappointing too. What's this guy doing? Richardson, an elite athlete, 4.4 rushing speed. That, 6'4", 244 pounds. This guy is a giant. Super fast. They're comparing him to Josh Allen. He's way faster than Josh Allen ever was. Josh Allen's going to come in at 4.8 on the 40. This guy's 4.4. This guy's running like Michael Vick, who is 6 feet, much smaller, much slimmer. Josh Allen, 4.75. So obviously this quarterback much faster. Superior athlete, 99% burst score. That's crazy. So Anthony Richardson is your upside, little bit of risk, but his upside is QB1 overall if he could put his shit together. Whereas I think Young and Stroud are, hey, we can get you QB1 production. I don't think you're talking about a top 5 quarterback by fantasy production for either guy. I don't think we'll get a lot of rushing upside from either guy. I think it's going to be touchdowns and yardage. I think they both project as solid QB2s in your SuperFlex league. Whereas Richardson, if it hits, it's going to hit big, and he will be a QB1. Now, that's the quarterback position. Will Levis did not go in the first round. He'll go probably early in the second round, so he's going to be in the QB mix, but I think he's going to probably come in your draft less relevant than some of these other guys. So let's go to the position players. We had 2 running backs go in the first round, and I think the landing spots were pretty good, probably for both, but definitely for Bijan Robinson. If he needed to do any more to solidify number 1 pick overall, he does not need to do it. He goes to the Falcons, and you couldn't ask for a better landing spot. The Falcons with Arthur Smith, they want to run the football. They are a run-focused team. They're going to build around Bijan. They're not waiting. They're going to use and abuse and work this kid until, the end of his first contract, and they're going to hope that they used him up. That's the reason why you take a running back early. You're probably paying more than you need to for a running back. You can get running backs for cheap in the NFL right now. But you lock them up for 5 years. You can get another year with a relatively low-cost franchise tag, and then you move on. So Bijan will be worked to the bone. That's what we want. 3-down skill set. Everything you need and want in a running back. The size is there. Let's take a look at his measurables. I mean, you're not getting anything bold here by me saying this is the number 1 guy. 4.4 on the 40. Really good burst score. Really great speed score. Everything about this kid, the size 215, 5'11", everything is prototype. And he can catch a pass. For 300 yards, 26 receptions. These are really good college numbers. It's not going to blow you away. That will increase in the pros, but good college numbers, can catch a pass. Gotta love Bijan and his landing spot. He is your number 1 overall pick. So as of right now, in terms of the rankings, I've got it Bijan. And then it gets interesting with the 3 quarterbacks. And I think you have to judge it based on the type of team that you have. So Bijan will go in the first round of real redraft leagues. These 3 quarterbacks will not. But Anthony Richardson, highest upside. So if my team is sort of a bottom of the league, bottom tier team, I'm probably taking my shot with Anthony Richardson as my QB1 overall out of this class because his upside is the largest. If I've got a team where I've got a solid QB1, I've got Mahomes, I've got Josh Allen, I've got Jalen Hurts, those are the best guys, but I've got Joe Burrow, I've got Justin Fields, I've got a number 1 quarterback, and I need a QB2, and I'm a competitive team. meaning I'm competing this year, next year. If I just fill in that guy, I had Trey Lance there and he hasn't done it. That's where you want to go for Bryce Young. You just say, you know what? I don't want to risk it. The safe play, this kid will have 3 years as a starter, and, we'll see how it goes. The safer play is Bryce Young. The upside play is Richardson. And CJ Stroud is just hanging out in the middle like, what about me? What's the story with me? And I like CJ Stroud almost as much as Young, but obviously Young went first. He was scouted, and, you got to respect that, right? So the big shock of the draft was Jahmyr Gibbs going 12th overall to the Lions, a Lions team that already had DK Swift and had just signed David Montgomery, who was a good 3-down back. What's up with that? So Jahmyr Gibbs, really interesting landing spot. If the Lions don't get rid of Swift like in the next few days or by trade or something, this is a horrible outlook for him year one. I don't like it at all. I think in redraft, if we go into training camp with Swift still on the roster, now it's a 3-headed disaster for the Lions. I didn't like the pick. I didn't like the draft for the Lions. By the way, on that note, oh my God, the Eagles owned this draft. I don't even know. The rich got richer. Carter Carter and I can't remember the other guy's name. Oh, he's not even showing here, but Carter and Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith, 31. What? One of the top 4 or 5 players on defense in this entire draft. So really great job by the Eagles. So just a little side note there. But as for the Lions, I think they had a horrible draft. I don't understand it. But that being said, the upside for Jahmyr Gibbs is Jamal Charles. That's a similar guy, right? Jamal Charles was the same size as Gibbs. He had an incredible NFL career, and he was able to do it for quite a few years. So the upside is there for Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, the Lions want this style of running back on their team, this great pass-catching, super fast weapon level running back, and they tried it with Swift. It really just hasn't worked out for them. So they're doing it again with Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll see how it goes. I think it's risky. I don't love it. Normally, a first-round running back would, like Gibbs, would be a strong candidate to be taken ahead of these quarterbacks, even in SuperFlex, and certainly in standard or non-SuperFlex leagues. But I think there's an argument for some of these wide receivers ahead of Gibbs, and we might even make an argument after day 2 for some of those running backs that go ahead of him as well. So I like Gibbs. Listen, you can't deny pick 12 overall. That is some serious draft capital for a running back. Running backs don't even normally go in the first round. So you have to elevate from a draft capital perspective, Jahmyr Gibbs above all of the wide receivers that went. It's just like a little bit of situational stuff that has me thinking twice. But as of right now, you're probably going to see Jahmyr Gibbs go ahead of all of the wide receivers in this class. And if Swift gets traded or is just cut or something happens with Swift, that'll really be happening. So, I guess if you're drafting quickly, you got to take the shot. And I think there's almost no chance, for example, that Swift is with the Lions after this year. So you'll get Jahmyr Gibbs having his shot, at least at being that RB, that pass catching RB, which is a fantasy productive role, but not what we're hoping. We want running backs that also get goal line carry. Like touchdowns are important. And so you don't really get a lot of touchdowns in the type of role that Jahmyr Gibbs seems like he's going to be in. But if he shows that he can handle a workload, he's also very similar in size to Austin Eckler. And if you got Austin Eckler, that's peak what Jahmyr Gibbs probably can be. So Austin Eckler is 27, 28. If you got that, but now that seems to be what the Lions are looking for. And, I think you got to take the shot, because I think any one of us will sign up for Austin Eckler's career in Dynasty in just about any format, even in even in half PPR. I think I'd sign up for Austin Eckler all day. So that's the upside for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I do think that he's going to go 1.5 overall. So we've got Bijan, we've got 3 quarterbacks. Order them based on your team needs, with the safest being Young, the upside being Richardson. If you got balls, you put Richardson first, keeping it real. If you got the fucking cojones, that's what you're going to do. but not everybody got the big balls. Or your team might not need, it might not be well served taking a risk like that because Richardson might not play right off the bat. It's very possible he doesn't play off the bat. And we could get a full Trey Lance situation where weird shit keeps happening. So we'll see, where he looks terrible in camp. That's why later drafts will be better on that note. All right, let's scroll down to the 4 wide receivers that went in a row in this draft. I want to talk a little bit about each of them here. So the draft goes on, and then we get the run on wide receivers, 4 in a row. And that was all the wide receivers taken in the first round, 4 in a row. Of course, we had Dalton Kincaid, who's a tight end, but 4 wide receivers in a row. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, widely considered the number 1 wide receiver in this draft, ends up going 20th overall. JSN to Seattle. Seattle is pretty stacked at wide receiver right now. They've got Lockett, they've got Metcalf, but Lockett's probably in his swan song season. We probably won't see Lockett after this year. He's 31 or 32. He's getting up there. JSN seems like a perfect replacement for him, but it's also important to note that with DK Metcalf on that team, that's a 1A situation at best. Like I could see JSN surpassing even DK Metcalf and being the number 1, but maybe. I think we see a situation similar like that where it works great on the Eagles with Smith and A.J. Brown, right? 2 really good guys and 2 great fantasy performers. It's fine. And it works out just fine. So you can get a WR1 in Jackson Smith-Njigba with Metcalf there. You probably won't get it if Tyler Lockett's still there because there's just too many mouths to feed. The other concern I have with Seattle is just who's the quarterback. Geno Smith, all right, this year. What about next year? What's the quarterback situation look like long-term in Seattle? And it's an unknown. So there's a little bit of risk there relative to this next guy who I think fell into the perfect situation, even if the player himself may be slightly less good than JSN. And of course, that's Quentin Johnston, wide receiver who went to the Chargers. Let's bring up Quentin Johnston here and just get a look at his dimensions. He is a larger wide receiver, 6'3". And again, Player Profiler, great website to go to sort of get these draft profiles. I really love it for that. To give you a comparable who here. Hopefully he's not Josh Doxson. That didn't work out so well. But the speed is just okay, 4.57 speed, but it's good for the size. 208, it's all right for the size. He is not going to blow you out of the water by any stretch. Now, what I like about Quentin Johnston is he's on the Chargers, a team that is in flux a little bit at wide receiver. At the same time, has Herbert locked in as their quarterback forever. So, like, hey, I want wide receivers. They're going to be locked in with Herbert, just like back in the day. Whatever player was taken on the Colts when Peyton Manning was there, you're like, yeah, get that guy. Right? He's going to be regular fantasy, draft Marvin Harrison. I don't care who it is. So in this case, let's talk about what's going on with the Chargers. The Chargers, I mean, they have the very, very old Keenan Allen. Is Allen even going to be back this year? Probably this year, but maybe not. He's old. Yeah, he's what, 32? Age 31. Okay. Now, age 31, 32, these guys start to fall off. This is it. This is the swan song for Keenan Allen. So he might not even be with the team. Mike Williams, who's with the Chargers, always hurt. Funny, Mike Williams plays a similar role, but, I'm not worried about his age, but he's just never been a ball hog. And again, it's Keenan Allen who's been getting more of the targets. Williams and Johnston have similar sort of metrics. They basically kind of seem like very similar players. But Williams, he's been doing it for a long time. He's never making it through a full season. And whenever Keenan Allen is there, he gets more of the targets. So there's a massive, massive potential opening here for Quentin Johnston with the Chargers, with Herbert for his career, to potentially be better than JSN in terms of just an overall player. So I'm still going to rank JSN ahead of him, but the quarterback upgrade that Quentin Johnston gets, plus the potential near-term opportunity with Keenan Allen likely maybe even not being there for this year, but certainly after this year, a big question mark with Mike Williams always hurt and never a ball hog as a thing. And of course, not much else going on at wide receiver. The potential departure of Austin Eckler as well might open up some targets. So there's a lot of reasons to like Quentin Johnston. And hey, he's a first round drafted wide receiver with size and speed and everything you want. Very happy to get him. Like I said, though, I will say this. For now, I'll rank him. I mean, I think the way they went is how the rankings pretty much should be. As crazy as it is. I could see taking Quentin Johnston ahead of JSN, though. Like, if somebody did that, I don't have a problem with it. Now, next up, we've got Zay Flowers, who goes to the Ravens. And again, I like this landing spot. A lot of people didn't like the landing spot for Flowers. I think it's great. I mean, Hollywood Brown excelled in this situation, and people are talking about Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman has not done well when he's been on the field with Lamar Jackson. He's been around for a while. It's not new. He's always hurt, and when he's not hurt, he hasn't been productive. So Bateman, listen, I'm holding out hope, but Bateman is not somebody I'm excited about, right? So I don't think that's a big competitor. Odell Beckham, that's a 1-year thing for the Ravens. And Odell is somebody who's never makes it through a season. So again, Zay Flowers could be WR1 on this team in short time. People saying Lamar Jackson doesn't want to throw or doesn't throw as much. I don't agree with that. I think the Ravens are actively game planning to keep Lamar Jackson in the pocket, throwing more. Now, the Ravens will try to play defense and run the football and do all of that, and they are those things. But the WR1 has excelled. Of course, you've got Mark Andrews there as a competitor, so there's that. 5'9", 182. He's not exactly a giant, probably not a touchdown scoring monster. Although, again, Hollywood Brown wasn't massive, and he scored a lot of touchdowns for that team, so who knows? Great route runner, could be a really good spot. So I'm excited about, say, Flowers. But again, I'm leaving it open that for night 2 of the draft, we may very well get some running backs in some good landing spots that will vault ahead of all of these wide receivers. So we're not settled at all. And this wide receiver class definitely is a massive downgrade from what we saw last year. Last year it was fantastic. This year, it really is a downgrade. And none of these guys, I will take any of the rookies from last year. So, like, for example, even Treylon Burks, who's sort of like one of the least good late rookies from last season. We talk about the first round guys. I would take all of the first round guys just about ahead of pretty much all of these guys, especially having seen them for a year. So, you're talking Garrett Wilson, of course, and Drake London. And so if you're in a dynasty league and somebody's offering you, you can offer, if you have pick 1.5 or 6, you'd offer that for London or Devonta Smith or any of those type of players. I would most definitely make that deal rather than taking one of these guys. So I think if you have any of these picks, the ultimate trade target for me, I actually think might be Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith's a little undervalued compared to what he should be. You might be able to get him for pick 1.5 or 1.6, like just past the quarterback zone, or maybe even an earlier pick because you're like, I don't care. 1.4. I'm giving it up. Jahmyr Gibbs / CJ Stroud. I'm giving it up. It's okay. So the least on the list here for me is Jordan Addison, and he goes last in the group. Jordan Addison has some size issues. He's only 5'11". He's 173 pounds at 5'11". Now, again, I'm going to compare that to Zay Flowers so you get the idea here. He's 182, 10 pounds heavier, but 5'9". So he's a little more of a filled out person compared to Addison, who is just skinny. I don't know how else to put it. He's little. He's slight. 5'11", 173. That is actual Devonta Smith sizing, but Devonta Smith's like the greatest wide receiver ever, like talent-wise. Not ever, but you get the idea. He was just much more heralded. So Addison, very, very small, good route runner. Also locked into WR2 for his team forever. He will never be the big dog on the Vikings. That's Jackson's. Just Justin Jackson. Jefferson's role. So he's always going to be behind Jefferson on the Vikings. He's just the number 2 guy. That's fine. And this will probably be, Addison's upside is a solid yeoman-like WR2, right? There are some questions about the quarterback situation in Minnesota. What happens after Kirk Cousins? What happens after this year? So there are question marks there. So Jordan Addison is, again, one of these guys that I could definitely see not wanting to take at all, or looking for even sort of second and third day running backs to elevate ahead of him. Maybe even a Will Levis if he goes early in round 2. Definitely would be somebody I think will be elevated above Addison for me. Again, the WR2 for the Vikings, maybe 3 with KJ Osborne there. I don't know. I don't love it. Too small, 5'11", 173. It screams danger. It screams not big enough, not thick enough to play in the NFL. So we'll see if that changes, but he's a little bit on the small side for me. And I wasn't impressed by the speed. I don't think that I want to sit here and really do too much scout level evaluations. That's not something I like to do. But if you're going to be 173 pounds, 5'11", I like to see a 4.4. This is 4.5. It's fine. 69th percentile. It's not good enough. So I'm not blown away. The other thing that didn't blow me away, and now I don't know what's up with that, but his target share on his team went down significantly from 2020. There might be some injuries involved here, but I'm just not seeing the domination that had been seen from this kid in 2021. So, yeah, move him down for me. And finally, Dalton Kincaid goes to the Bills. That's a good landing spot for what is a very athletic, pass-catching tight end. And Dalton Kincaid, he might wind up as the WR2 effectively for the Bills. When you think about what they have on that team right now, they need pass catchers. Obviously this pushes Dawson Knox to goodbye territory, right? You got nothing going on. I've got no metrics to go off of for Kincaid, but he did have dominant college performances, especially in this past year. Look, 21% target share for a tight end is as good as it gets. So he was effectively the WR1 on his college team. That is what I like to see out of a tight end coming out. I don't like taking early tight ends. I think in TE premium leagues and 2 TE leagues, this guy will be someone that is probably going to sneak his way up into the dynasty first round of the draft. Tight ends usually take a while, though, to come around and be good fantasy producers, as a lot of people are suffering through Kyle Pitts, understand, who've waited with TJ Hawkinson, who's flash, but finally now coming out of his shell. It takes a few years for most of the tight ends to emerge. And so we might not get a great year out of Kincaid year one, but that we might get a great year out of him because it's a great landing, as good of a landing spot as you could have possibly gotten. So I like that. And Dalton Kincaid, potential for a first rounder. Big takeaway here is just that I'm putting Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of all of the wide receivers. More so when, not if, but when Swift leaves the team or is traded or whatever. And then at quarterback, takeaway is if you got the balls, Anthony Richardson should be your QB1. There's an argument that Anthony Richardson should be number one player overall because of his massive upside and the important position, but I would certainly rather take the safety at this point of Bijan Robinson. So no, but I do think Anthony Richardson is very much worthy of being taken ahead of Young and Stroud for fantasy production purposes. Doesn't mean he's a better real life quarterback. Doesn't mean that's what I'm saying. I think he's much worse of a real life quarterback, but I think for as long as he plays as a starter, he will be fantasy productive for us, which I like. And his upside is QB1 overall, where Stroud, but his downside is bust, right? Full bust. Whereas Stroud and Bryce Young, their upside is top 12 QB1, for fantasy purposes, probably never a top 6. Neither one of them has the rushing upside or the pieces on their team to really get there. But they're less likely to be cut in a couple of years. They're more likely just to have a decent career. Anyway, so that'll do it. Rapid reaction, NFL draft. We'll be back after the entire draft to redo this and kind of get some dynasty rankings going, all of that good stuff. My full dynasty rankings will be out right after the NFL draft. I decided not to do pre-draft stuff because it all changes so much anyway, and draft capital is so key. So I'll be back on dfsarmy.com. Of course, I'll be dropping my full SuperFlex dynasty rankings, my standard dynasty ranking. We'll have best ball rankings, all that stuff coming out. Best ball is about to go nuts over on Underdog now that the draft is coming to an end. So they start to pass some of these early contests, and they are very, very soft and very fun, especially if you're up to date on your research. So that'll do it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoy, and let's see what happens for the rest of this draft.